I donated my kidney to save my husband's life. But then I woke up and found divorce papers on my hospital bed. For the longest time, I believed in love like it was religion, something you gave your whole soul to, even when it hurt. And for me, that love was Ethan. I met Ethan 8 years ago in the middle of my most chaotic chapter. I was 24, juggling 2 jobs and a part-time nursing degree. My mother had just passed away from a long battle with cancer, and I was practically raising my younger brother, Jake, on my own. I had no time for romance, no space in my chest for butterflies. But Ethan came in like spring after a brutal winter, soft-spoken, patient, and kind. We met at a hospital fundraiser. He was a charming young architect sponsoring the cancer ward's redesign, and I was one of the volunteer speakers. He listened to me like I mattered. Like every word I said deserved a pause and a breath. And by the end of the night, he handed me his number and said, "I'd really like to see where this goes. No pressure, no games." Ethan made me believe in calm. He made me believe that I didn't always have to fight for love. Sometimes it could come easy. We got married 2 years later, in a quiet backyard ceremony with string lights, mismatched chairs, and way too many happy tears. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. For a while, we were happy. We built our lives around late-night ramen, spontaneous road trips, and silly little traditions like burning cinnamon sticks every Sunday because he said it smelled like home. I supported his career as his architecture firm took off, and he stood by me while I finished nursing school. We were the kind of couple people envied, at least on the surface. But cracks don't always show until the house starts shaking. It started with little things. Ethan got busier, distant. He'd say he was working late, but sometimes I'd catch him staring off into space at dinner, his mind clearly elsewhere. I chalked it up to stress. His firm had just landed a high-profile client, a real estate magnate known for being demanding. I tried to be understanding, tried not to nag. After all, marriages go through rough patches. We were just tired. Then came the diagnosis. It was a rainy Thursday when Ethan collapsed in the shower. I found him unconscious, his lips pale and his pulse weak. The doctor told me what I never saw coming. Ethan had advanced kidney failure. His kidneys were barely functioning. He needed dialysis or a transplant. My world stopped. The love of my life was dying. I refused to accept that. We started dialysis immediately, and I researched every transplant registry, every clinical trial, every medical journal I could find. Weeks passed. Ethan grew weaker, quieter, more withdrawn. One night, after throwing up blood from another failed dialysis session, he broke down in my arms and whispered, "I don't want to die." I held his face and told him, "Then you won't." I got tested the very next morning. I was a match. The odds were low, almost impossibly low, but I was a perfect donor. The doctor explained the risks, complications, long recovery, permanent changes to my body. But I didn't care. Not even for a second. If it meant saving Ethan, I would have given him my heart if I could. He cried when I told him. Real tears, shaking hands, that broken little smile he gave when he didn't know how to say thank you. "You're saving my life," he said. "You're everything to me." We scheduled the surgery for the following month. I didn't tell many people. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted silence, healing, and a second chance at life for both of us. The night before the operation, Ethan held me in bed like he hadn't in months. He kissed my forehead and promised, "After this, I'm going to spend every day earning what you've done for me." I swear, I fell asleep believing that promise. But when I woke up, groggy, in pain, disoriented, something felt wrong. My hospital room was unusually quiet. No flowers, no visitors, no Ethan. I pressed the nurse call button. "Is my husband here?" I asked, throat dry from anesthesia. She looked confused, checked her clipboard, then handed me an envelope from the bedside table. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were divorce papers. Already signed. Dated. Filed. My vision blurred. My hands went numb. On the last page, scrawled in his handwriting, or just 4 words. I'm sorry. Take care. The divorce papers were real, legal, cold. No explanation, no closure, no Ethan. I lay in that hospital bed, fresh stitches across my side, a kidney short, heart ripped open, and the man I gave life to vanished. For hours, I couldn't move. Not from the pain, not from the shock. Nurses came in and out, checking vitals, adjusting drips, giving polite smiles. But none of them could see that I wasn't just recovering from surgery, I was dying inside. How could he leave me now when I was most vulnerable? When I'd given him part of my body, part of my soul. A part of me refused to believe it. Maybe there'd been a mistake. Maybe he had a reason. Maybe someone forced him. My mind spun with denial, clinging to anything except the truth sitting in my lap, inked in blue. I called his phone. Straight to voicemail. I called again. 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 I texted. Ethan, what the hell is this? Then, where are you? Then finally, please, just tell me why. No response. It took another day before I could check myself out of the hospital. Against medical advice, bruised and stitched, I signed the discharge forms and took a cab straight to our home. Correction. His home now. The door lock had already been changed. I stood outside in my slippers, hospital bracelet still on my wrist, banging on the door like a madwoman. My chest burned. My scar ached. But none of it compared to the hurt that screamed from my heart. The neighbor across the street, Mrs. Linton, peeked through her curtains and stepped outside. Honey, I didn't know you were back. I turned to her slowly. Did Ethan say anything? Where is he? She hesitated. Bit her lip. He moved out the day after your surgery. Took everything. Said it was urgent. I thought you knew. I didn't speak. I couldn't. She stepped closer, lowering her voice like she was ashamed of what she was about to say. There was another woman. I saw her help him pack. She wasn't you. My knees gave out. She caught me before I hit the pavement and helped me to the porch. I sat there for half an hour, staring blankly ahead, as realization finally broke through the fog. Ethan left me for someone else. And he waited until after I gave him my kidney to do it. The next few weeks were a blur. I moved in with my best friend, Andrea, who nearly lost her mind when she found out. She wanted to call the cops, the lawyers, the press. But I was too numb to care. I'd stopped eating, I couldn't sleep. I just laid in bed, one hand on my stitched up side, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. Andrea tried everything. Movies, wine nights, walks, therapy brochures. Nothing helped until one morning, she burst into my room holding her phone, eyes wide. Look at this, she said. Look. It was a photo. Ethan. Smiling. With her. Young, blonde, legs for days. Wrapped around his arm like a trophy he'd just won. Caption. Celebrating life, love, and second chances. They were on a beach in Mexico. Laughing, drinks in hand. No signs of guilt. No signs of pain. Just days after the transplant. My breath caught. My stomach turned. But it wasn't heartbreak this time. It was rage. He was celebrating. Celebrating while I lay in a hospital bed, bleeding and broken. And then came the twist of the knife. Andrea clicked to the next post. The woman was tagged. Her name, Sophie Linwood. Not just anyone. My former best friend. My maid of honor. The girl who helped plan our wedding. The betrayal was layered, rotten to the core. Ethan had left me for Sophie. And not recently. Not spontaneously. We just fell in love. I remembered now. The late nights at his office when Sophie had been just crashing on the couch after a breakup. The canceled plans. The weird energy when I entered the room. The way she suddenly moved out of state 6 months ago with no explanation. It wasn't coincidence. It was premeditated. Ethan had been sleeping with her behind my back, probably for over a year. He waited until the surgery. Waited until I'd saved his life. waited until I was too weak to fight back. And then he disappeared with her. The pieces started connecting. The distance, the lies, the coldness. Even his tears before surgery, crocodile tears, guilt masquerading as love. He used me. He needed a kidney. He needed a perfect match. And I, the idiot wife, handed it to him with a bow, believing it was love. I wasn't his wife. I was his donor. His insurance policy. The betrayal lit something inside me that had been dead for weeks. Anger. Fire. Purpose. I'm going to destroy him, I whispered. Andrea looked at me, uncertain. Legally? No, I said, voice sharper than I'd heard in months. Personally. I spent the next week gathering myself. Eating again, walking. Healing my body, because the war I was about to start required strength. Andrea helped me recover, and more than that, she helped me research. We learned that Ethan hadn't just left. He transferred all assets into his personal firm account the same day I went under anesthesia. The house, too. A sleazy loophole using a power of attorney I'd signed months ago in case of emergency. He made it seem like it was for hospital consent. I didn't even read the fine print. He'd been planning this for months. Worse, he'd cleaned out our joint savings. Moved everything to a private account. On paper, I had nothing. He left me to die, alone and broke, after I saved his life. But what he didn't know was that I wasn't just a nurse. I was a woman who'd survived everything. My mother's cancer. My father's abuse. Years of raising a younger brother on scraps. I'd survived before Ethan, and I'd survived long after him. And this time, I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to rise, and make him wish he died instead. It's funny how betrayal doesn't just break you, it rebuilds you, too. The woman who cried in her hospital bed over a pair of divorce papers no longer existed. She died the day she found out her husband had run off with her best friend, using her kidney as his golden parachute. What stood in her place was someone sharper, colder, focused. Me. I stopped mourning Ethan. I stopped asking why. There was no why that would make it okay. No explanation that would undo what he did. I didn't want justice. I wanted reckoning. The first thing I did was reach out to a former patient of mine. Mr. Hargrove. Wealthy. Elderly. Paranoid. He was the kind of man who refused to trust anyone but his private nurse. Me. A few months back, he'd mentioned something about getting revenge on a business partner and how he used a private investigator to do it. That investigator's name was Silas Gray. And Silas owed Hargrove a favor. I called in that favor. Silas was ex-military, now running his own pie firm. Not the kind of man who worked with anyone. But when I explained what happened, he didn't hesitate. Tell me what you want to know, he said. Or, what you want done. I want everything, I replied. Where they are. What they're doing. How they're spending my money. I want leverage. And I want time to make them bleed, slow. He smirked. Now you're talking my language. Within a week, Silas delivered. They were in Cabo San Lucas, living it up in a villa Ethan rented under his firm's name. He used company funds to finance the entire thing. Flights, hotel, jewelry, even a custom Rolex that had New Life engraved on the back. New Life. My kidney gave him that. My blood. My pain. My organ. Sophie wasn't just a fling. She'd replace me, fully. Ethan was parading her around like a new wife. I wasn't even a scar in his memory. But karma doesn't work on its own schedule. Sometimes, you have to help it along. Step 1. Get them back home. If they stayed abroad, they were out of reach. Ethan's firm was headquartered in the US, and if I wanted to dismantle everything he built, I needed him back on his throne. So I filed a fraud complaint. Silas helped me gather proof, transfer documents, manipulated signatures, dated texts showing Ethan's intentions. Then we dropped an anonymous complaint to his firm's investors and board members, including photographic evidence of him living luxuriously on company funds. Just enough pressure to cause panic. Just enough to draw him home. And it worked. 3 days later, Ethan flew back in, dragging Sophie behind him like luggage. She looked less like the glowing Instagram goddess and more like a stressed, over-tanned intern. The board was furious. They froze his firm's accounts pending audit. Ethan scrambled, and I smiled. Step 2. Hit him where it hurts. Reputation. I created a burner profile, posted screenshots, DMs, pictures, the surgery scar, a redacted version of the divorce letter's date. Caption. Don't donate your kidney to someone you think loves you. He might run off with your best friend before you've even healed. The post went viral in hours. People were outraged. Women's groups reposted it. A few online news sites picked it up. People dug into his Instagram and found Sophie's photos. The comments turned venomous. #KidneyQueen started trending. Every post of Ethan's turned into a battlefield. Clients pulled deals. His firm's PR team quit. Even his perfect match, Sophie, started deleting her socials. It was glorious. But still not enough. I wanted Ethan to suffer the kind of silence I did. The kind that echoes in your bones. The kind that whispers, "You're alone now." So I went quiet. For weeks, I didn't post. Didn't retaliate. Didn't even look at his name online. I let the world take over while I planned the final move. Silas helped me find the final piece of the puzzle. The prenup. Ethan and I had signed one, or rather, he had me sign it after our wedding, when we bought our home. But what he didn't expect was that I'd kept a copy. And in that copy, there was a very specific clause. Any marital asset transferred without consent, through coercion or deception, can be recontested if proven fraudulent. Translation. The house, the bank accounts, the retirement fund. If I could prove Ethan manipulated me, I could take it all back. And I had proof. The power of attorney I signed under medical duress. Text messages showing he reassured me days before the divorce. The fact that the transfer of assets happened while I was under anesthesia. Silas found me a cutthroat lawyer. She loved the story. She hated men like Ethan. "I'll gut him in court," she said. But I want it public. I want it loud. "You in?" I didn't hesitate. Burn it all. Ethan tried to settle. Of course he did. He sent a pathetic offer through his attorney, half of what was rightfully mine. No apology. No explanation. I declined. And I made sure he saw my interview. It aired 2 nights before the court hearing. A short, 10-minute segment on a popular network featuring me, blurred surgery photos, and a calm, steady voice explaining how I gave life to a man who left me in a hospital bed for another woman. Public opinion crucified him. The next day, Sophie packed her bags and left him. Step 3. Watch it all fall. In court, he couldn't look at me. Not once. His lawyer argued desperation. Stress. That he'd planned to separate eventually but didn't mean to hurt me. That his relationship with Sophie was complicated. My lawyer handed over every document, every message, every receipt. The judge didn't blink. I won the house, the accounts, retroactive damages. He had to repay every dollar he stole from me, plus interest. The kidney? That wasn't part of the court case. But it was part of the sentence Ethan would carry for the rest of his life. He'd survive. Only because of me. And that, somehow, was the cruelest justice of all. But just when I thought the game was over, something happened. Something that flipped everything on its head. A letter arrived. No return address. Inside, a photograph. Ethan, in a hospital bed. Again. But this time, not for kidneys. And taped to the back was a note, typed, not handwritten. "You don't know everything." He was hiding more than just the affair. Ask about Sophie. Ask about the baby. You were never just a donor. You were Plan B. I dropped the photo. My heart stopped. Because Sophie had told me years ago that she couldn't have children. She cried in my arms about it. Told me she'd never be a mother. But now everything was spinning again. What baby? What secret? What the hell was plan A? And just like that, my revenge story twisted into something darker, something deeper than I ever expected. I stared at that photo of Ethan in a hospital bed, hooked to monitors, pale, thinner than before. Not the Ethan I remembered, not even the Ethan I hated. He looked sick. But that wasn't what made my breath catch. It was the note. That typed, anonymous message. You don't know everything. He was hiding more than just the affair. Ask about Sophie. Ask about the baby. You were never just a donor. You were Plan B. Plan B. The words echoed like gunshots in my mind. There was something more. Something bigger than betrayal. Bigger than an affair. And I was done being left in the dark. I called Silas. I need a full background on Sophie. Everything: medical, financial, family, work history. I want to know where she was, who she talked to, what kind of birth control she took, if she ever even tried to get pregnant. I want everything. He hesitated. That's a very specific ask. There's a baby, I said flatly, and I need to know if it's hers or mine. Silas didn't question me again. In 72 hours, I had a dossier the size of a phone book, and in it were answers that made my blood run cold. Sophie hadn't been infertile. She'd lied. She told me she couldn't have children. She told Ethan she had fertility problems. But it was a smokescreen, something to lower expectations while she plotted something grotesque. Because 2 years ago, she'd started visiting a fertility clinic. My fertility clinic. The one Ethan and I used when we were trying to conceive and struggling. The records were sealed. But Silas had his ways. She'd visited the lab on several occasions, under a fake name, using medical proxy access codes, ones that only Ethan and I shared. And then, it clicked. My eggs. Years ago, Ethan and I had done an egg retrieval and stored embryos in case natural conception didn't work. We had 3 frozen embryos. They were under both our names. They were supposed to be ours, and only used if we both signed off. But someone had bypassed that. Sophie had used my embryo. She was pregnant with my child. I felt the floor drop out from under me. I'd been betrayed in ways I didn't even have words for. My husband had lied. My best friend had stolen. And now, somewhere out there, my biological child was growing inside a woman who plotted my destruction. All while I bled in a hospital bed, one kidney short, one heart shattered. My pain had a new name now. Vengeance wasn't enough anymore. I wanted truth. I wanted everything. And I was going to rip it out of them, piece by piece. I started with Ethan. He was still under medical care. Not kidney related. He developed a serious post-surgical infection. Karma had done its part. Now it was my turn. I visited him. He was in a private hospital room, and the moment he saw me, his face drained of color. You have a lot of nerve showing up here, he said weakly. I gave you a kidney, I replied calmly. I have every right to be here. He looked away. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Didn't mean for what, Ethan? The affair? The fraud? Or stealing our embryo and planting it inside Sophie like some twisted science experiment? He froze. His eyes darted back to me. You know. Of course I know. He sat up straighter, guilt rippling through his features. But I saw no shame, only fear. The kind of fear that comes when your secrets start slipping through fingers you thought were strong. She said you'd never want the baby, he muttered. That you were too focused on your career. That she could give them a better life. My voice was a whisper. You stole my child. I didn't want it like this. But you still did it. I leaned in close, scar still fresh on my side, the fire in my chest burning through every word. You don't get to rewrite this. You don't get to turn me into the bitter ex or the cold woman who didn't want a family. I wanted a child with you. You just didn't want me. So you found someone else and used my body to create your perfect life. He had no reply, no apology, only silence. I stood to leave. I'm taking her to court, I said. Sophie, The baby. The clinic. Everyone who let this happen. He grabbed my wrist. Weakly. Please. Don't take the baby from me. I looked down at his trembling hand. You already did. The legal battle was a bloodbath. But I was ready. We filed against the clinic for breach of consent. We filed against Sophie for medical fraud, and even hinted at reproductive coercion. The court had never seen a case quite like this. The public was once again on my side. The same media outlets that covered my kidney betrayal were now covering the embryo theft. Sophie vanished. But not for long. Silas tracked her to a private maternity spa in Arizona, where she'd been hiding out on Ethan's dime. We served her papers in her bathrobe. And when she finally showed up to court, 8 months pregnant, the look she gave me was pure venom. You were never meant to be a mother, she spat as we passed in the hall. I turned, my voice ice. And you were never meant to carry my child. The court battle dragged. Expert testimonies. Medical records. Witnesses. More lies from Ethan. More denial from Sophie. But truth doesn't rot. It survives. Eventually, the judge ruled that the embryo transfer had been done illegally. That my rights as the biological mother had been violated. And while custody wouldn't be determined until the child was born, the court granted me pre-birth parental standing. Translation? Once that baby was born, I had a claim. I could fight for full custody. And I would, because that child was made of me, my blood, my DNA, my soul. I had lost too much to let someone else raise the only innocent part of this nightmare. The revenge was almost complete. Ethan lost his career. His company collapsed. His image was ruined. Sophie was indicted for medical fraud. She'd never practice again. No hospital, no clinic would touch her. And I, the woman they both tried to discard, was standing taller than ever, surrounded by support, love, and power they never thought I'd reclaim. But still, there was one more twist. One more truth buried beneath the rubble. And it came the day Sophie went into labor. She delivered a baby boy. I wasn't allowed in the room, but I was notified immediately. My lawyer called me, barely able to speak. There's something you need to know, she said. What? They ran a DNA test as part of the custody filing. You're listed as the biological mother as expected, but the father. Yes? It's not Ethan. My entire world shifted. What do you mean it's not Ethan? It was our embryo. There was a pause. Then the words came. The sperm was swapped. Ethan's name was on the form, but the actual DNA, it's not his. Then? Whose is it? Silence. Then a whisper. Your brother's. Your brother's. Those 2 words cracked something inside me that I didn't even know was still whole. My brother. Jake? I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. I felt like I'd stepped into a parallel world, one where nothing made sense, where betrayal wasn't just cruel, but incestuous, twisted, unforgivable. My lawyer paused, her voice quiet, careful. I double-checked the report, she said. It's not a lab error. The DNA is a match to your brother, not Ethan. I dropped the phone. The memories came flooding back like shards of broken glass. Jake and Ethan had grown unusually close during the last few years of our marriage. I used to think it was sweet, Ethan helping my little brother grow up, giving him a male figure he never had. Jake was only 18 when Ethan and I got married. And he moved in with us for college. I used to joke that I had 2 children in the house, one I married and one I raised. I thought Ethan was being a mentor. Now I saw it for what it was. Grooming. Planning. Something darker. And suddenly, all the odd little red flags I'd ignored over the years came rushing back. Jake dropping out of school mysteriously his junior year. Ethan footing the bill for Jake's business venture that never existed. That one time I found a prescription with Jake's name on it in Ethan's drawer, fertility supplements, which he claimed were mine. But most of all, I remembered something Jake said just once during a drunken argument 2 years ago. You think he married you for love? You were just the one with the uterus, sis. I'd laughed at the time, thought he was being cruel for no reason. But now, I realized he told the truth. I demanded another meeting with Silas. We met in his office, where the lights were low and the truth always felt a little more bearable in shadows. I need the full story, I said, voice flat. I need you to look into Jake now. He didn't ask questions this time. 2 days later, Silas handed me a report, and it shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. Jake had been living off Ethan's money for years, through shell accounts, private flights, clinic payments. But the most horrifying part? Jake had signed off on the sperm donation, not Ethan. He'd done it using Ethan's ID, using access he got from living in our house. The embryo Sophie carried wasn't just made from my body. It was created with my brother's sperm. And Ethan knew. He helped orchestrate it. Why? Because he had failed multiple sperm quality tests, and the doctor had told him the stored embryos we'd created years ago were not viable because of his side. But I didn't know that, because he never told me. Instead, he kept me busy with work, convinced me not to pursue IVF again. While behind my back, he and Jake began working on their plan B, using my eggs and Jake's sperm. The child Sophie carried was mine, and Jake's. My nephew. My son. I broke down. There's no word for that kind of pain, when betrayal coils into your family tree and poisons the roots. Jake. My baby brother. The one I'd raised after our parents died. The one I skipped college parties for, worked 2 jobs for. I gave up everything so he wouldn't grow up broken. And now? He had used me, my genetics, my motherhood, and handed it over like it was a lab experiment. What was I to them? A vessel? No. I was their target, their sacrifice, their mother figure warped into a means to an end. They wanted a child of my bloodline, with Ethan's name on it and Jake's DNA behind it. I was never meant to know. They thought I'd die with the secret. But I survived. And now I had something stronger than revenge. I had the truth. The next step wasn't dramatic. I didn't storm into Jake's apartment and slap him. I didn't scream. I sent a letter. 3 sentences. I know everything. You're done. Don't ever come near me or that child again. Then I filed an emergency injunction for full custody. This time, my lawyer added a protective clause for potential familial genetic trauma and psychological harm should custody not be granted. The judge didn't even hesitate. Full custody granted. Permanently. Jake didn't show up to the hearing. Neither did Ethan. Sophie did. Alone. Thin, hollow-eyed, trying to win sympathy. But when she looked at me, I saw it, the fear. The realization that I was never going to stop. The court ordered her to surrender all parental rights. She signed the document without a fight. That day, I walked out of the courthouse with the papers in one hand, and my son in the other. I named him Lucas. Not after anyone. Not for any symbolic reason. Just because it was a name not tied to pain. A name that felt clean. For the first time in years, I felt peace. It wasn't a fairy tale. I still had nightmares. Still woke up sweating, hand over the scar where my kidney used to be. I'd lost trust. I'd lost time. But I had him. And he smiled like sunlight, like he didn't know he was born from war. Maybe he'd never need to. Maybe that was the real revenge. To break the cycle. To raise a child without lies. Without betrayal. Without secrets. To live. Fully. While the people who tried to destroy me rot in the silence they built for themselves. Oh, I received one final letter. Unmarked envelope. No return address. Inside, a photo. Ethan, alone, in a small rented apartment, bald, cheeks sunken, hospital bracelet on his wrist. The note attached said simply, kidney rejection. No donor matches available. He'll be on dialysis for the rest of his life. I stared at the photo for a long time. Then I folded it in half and threw it in the fire.